various parts. Reports today suggesting that China might be taking our coal again after that announcement. Our dollar has surged in price. Coal, of course, is keeping our economy afloat, even though we say we don't like it. Former Resources Minister and MP for Hinkler, based on Bundaberg, Keith Pitt, is joining us, and James Ashby from One Nation is a little further along the Queensland coast at Yeppoon. Gentlemen, Happy New Year to you both. Look, you both know that coal is important, Keith, coal is important. It's absolutely vital, but we don't seem to want to use it as much as we once did.
Well, this is the ridiculous part of all this. So we see reports today that China will potentially take Australian coal exports again. So firstly, good. Secondly, that will probably have an impact on their gas demand as well. But thirdly, it's likely to drive up the price because, the market is very buoyant. It's expensive. There's not much of it. There's a lot of contracts that are forward priced already. And it'll make an absolute mockery of Anthony Albanese and Chris Bowen's plans. They'll need more than $1.25 billion to subsidise those coal-fired power stations, given what they did before Christmas. But you make the point and you're spot on, Gary. It's Australia's coal, but they won't use it for Australia's purposes and in the interest of the Australian people.
Yeah, it's madness. James, we are vilifying it. We love taxing it. Some people loathe it. Personally, I think coal's great. There's plenty of it somewhere to the west of where both you and Keith are today.
Yeah, Gary, the biggest thing to fathom here is China are building another 100 coal-fired power stations over there. So it's not as though they're doing us any favours by taking this. They desperately need it. And this time last year, to give viewers an understanding of just how much coal China is consuming, this time last year, they were averaging about 400 million tonnes a month, over 13 million tonnes a day. And to give you some indication, just off the coast here of the of central Queensland, we've got the bulk carriers that send that coal over to China and other parts of the world. And to give you some indication, that's somewhere between 80 and 90 bulk carriers of coal a day. And they were last year's figures. So as they continue building more coal-fired power stations, of course, they're going to use more. And here we are, suckers. We're turning off our coal-fired power stations. It's madness, and unfortunately, we're going to be the ones that pay for it.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I'm enjoying that little bit of climate change you're having there on the Yeppoon coast there with that umbrella. I love it. And of course, Keith is all in favour of the pink test with that tie. I hope he won the bet. Prime Minister Albanese, well, he's going to visit our nearest neighbour, Papua New Guinea, next week. Keith, that must be so exciting. They want us to give them more money, and they've offered Albo a rare, in fact, I think it's the first time ever, speaking gig in the Prime Minister in the Papua New Guinean Parliament. I just wonder what they'll make of our PM.
Well, PNG are at least consistent, Gary, I've got to say. When I was in the trade portfolio, and I know all the way through, whether it's the Coalition or the Labor Party, they want us to put more money into their budget. But they are a very important partner, particularly in terms of our national security to the north. It's important that we maintain those relationships. And it's also absolutely critical that whatever we are providing, it's stuff, it's infrastructure, it's roads, it's hospitals. It's not cash at the bank. I'll be interested to see what Mr Albanese has to say to the Papua New Guinean Parliament. It can be a pretty wild show at times.
Yeah, I would have thought so. Anyway, we'll watch with a great deal of interest. Airbus Albo's collecting more duty-free, James. And the waiting list, though, for staying at home packages here in Australia, indeed, especially in Queensland, are expanding because you see staff shortages are making it hard for some of the things that they say they're going to do to actually get done. Now, how the young are nurtured and the elderly are cared for is often the way to judge how society operates. We're a big fail right now, James.
Well, I'm happy to give the Prime Minister a speaking engagement here in Rockhampton or Yeppoon if he's happy to give more money to the aged care sector. Look, it is tragic to think that a lot of these people are forced to stay at home and not get the services they need. They don't ask for much. I know I've got elderly grandparents and unfortunately the further and more remote you end up as a older person, it is harder to stay in your home because those services don't exist. So it's okay if you live in inner city Brisbane or Sunshine Coast, like one of my grandparents does. The facilities are somewhat there for a nurse to come and change a catheter or do those sorts of menial tasks if you've got someone that you need to mow a lawn. But basically, to keep somebody at home is half the cost of putting them into a nursing home. So this does need solving. I know that we have had a mild reduction in those on that waiting list, but there are still 10,000 plus people still looking for that assistance that are in their twilight years and deserve that little bit of extra attention.
Yeah, families can do the very best they can, but sometimes professional help is needed. Meanwhile, Keith, the political chaos in the United States, they say it might be settled by the weekend. Heavens, I don't know. But right now, America looks completely dishevelled. It's all the consequences of that close midterm election. It's lingering large in the Congress.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it looks like a Green Labor government almost. But what we see is I don't think they're going to change their minds, Gary. I really don't. I mean, what if they had 5 or 6 votes? There's been no change. It would be a miracle if they come to some arrangement overnight without changing the candidate. But it does reflect poorly on the US and their systems, but it's the one that they've got. I mean, it's a bit like when you look at Australia. Labor's not getting there without the Greens. You've now got the Teals taking up a whole stack of the crossbench that they can't really do anything about anything. And it comes down to 1 or 2 votes in the Senate as to whether legislation that the government puts up gets through. So I hope the US sorts it out. We need the United States to be strong, both in terms of their economy and, of course, national security right around the world, to be honest. So I'm looking forward to that being resolved.